billionaire made his pregnant wife sign a prenup in front of his mistress. She secretly taped the whole thing. Lucy Martinez never imagined her life could twist into something straight out of a gossip columnist's dream. She had always believed in true love, cherished her marriage to Mark, and looked forward to building a family. Yet in one heart-stopping moment, everything changed. One rainy afternoon, heavily pregnant and vulnerable, she found herself across the table from Mark's cold-eyed attorney, and more shockingly, his mistress perched smugly next to him, being forced to sign a mysterious prenuptial agreement. Lucy felt as if her heart were ripping in half. The betrayal, the confrontation. She had to capture it. So she discreetly pressed record, never imagining the firestorm that footage would one day spark. Lucy Martinez was born in the small Texas town of Caden, best known for its endless fields of sunflowers. The modest population took pride in its annual sunflower festival and a warm sense of community. Lucy grew up in a loving household. Her mother, Rosa, worked as a local school librarian. Her father, David, was a dependable postal clerk. Though her parents weren't wealthy, they instilled in her a deep sense of integrity, compassion, and resilience. These qualities shaped Lucy's view of the world and how she navigated life. She met Mark Redfield during her junior year of college in Austin. Mark, hailing from Houston, boasted about an illustrious family background. His father, Richard Redfield, was a noted real estate tycoon. Mark's self-assurance was magnetic. Though people at college found him cocky, Lucy was drawn to his confidence. He moved through life like a man who knew precisely where he was going, and Lucy, naive and starry-eyed, believed he was going somewhere good. Their whirlwind relationship took off with late-night diner dates and stolen campus library kisses. When Lucy returned home for breaks, her parents raised eyebrows at the extravagant gifts Mark would send her, but Lucy waved away their concerns. Eventually, Lucy graduated with a degree in early childhood education. Mark, with a business administration degree, spoke of starting his own real estate investment firm, branching away from his father's empire. He had big dreams, and Lucy shared in that grand vision. Within a year of her graduation, Mark proposed under a starlit sky at Lake Travis. Lucy's heart soared with joy. She accepted without hesitation. The ring sparkled under the moonlight, a perfect symbol of what she thought would be a perfect union. The wedding was a lavish affair, orchestrated by Mark's mother, the impeccably stylish Marion Redfield. The Redfields were well-to-do, having old money and new investments. Lucy's family, by contrast, had saved for years, just to help with the wedding expenses. Mark insisted on covering most of the costs. But Lucy was adamant that her family chip in something to preserve their dignity. Though Lucy sometimes felt overshadowed by the Redfields' wealth, Mark assured her it was only the beginning of the life they would share. Her parents worried, but Lucy wouldn't be swayed. She felt in her heart that Mark truly loved her wealth, aside. Once the honeymoon glow faded, Lucy found herself adapting to Mark's high-octane lifestyle. He was fiercely ambitious, routinely attending networking galas, forging business deals and making big decisions on the fly. Meanwhile, Lucy found a teaching position at a local preschool, a job that brought her a deep sense of fulfillment. Though their routines rarely synced, Lucy tried to be patient. She believed in Mark's dream of building a real estate empire from the ground up. But there were hints, small ones, that something was amiss. Late-night phone calls Mark answered in hushed tones, unexplained receipts from fancy restaurants Lucy had never visited, weekend work trips that left her lonely at home. At first, Lucy convinced herself that Mark was just under pressure from his father, hustling to make a name for himself. She reminded herself that trusting your spouse was the cornerstone of any successful marriage. Besides, Mark always rebounded with a show of affection, a surprise bouquet of flowers, or an elegant dinner at a 5-star restaurant. Still, her instincts whispered that something in their marriage was off-kilter. It was a chilly November evening when Lucy discovered she was pregnant. Despite her suspicions, she wanted to share the news with Mark with the same excitement they once had for each other. She bought a pair of tiny baby shoes, wrapped them carefully, and left them with her ultrasound photo on the kitchen table. Mark's reaction was surprisingly muted. He hugged her, said he was happy, but then immediately launched into scheduling an obstetrician appointment and discussing potential costs. Lucy waved away a pang of disappointment. Maybe that was just Mark, practical business-minded, not always the big romantic. She hoped the baby would draw them closer. She had no idea that her pregnancy would signal the beginning of one of the darkest chapters in her life, an unthinkable betrayal that would test not just her faith in Mark, but her faith in love itself. As Lucy's pregnancy advanced, her concerns about Mark's absences grew. She tried not to pry. She'd read enough advice columns warning about how nagging could push a spouse away. The problem was, Mark offered almost no explanation for his comings and goings. On several occasions, Lucy noticed that Mark's phone would beep incessantly into the night with text messages. When she asked who was texting, he'd shrug. "It's just business," he'd say, turning away. Still, Lucy found small joys in preparing for the baby. She spent her weekends painting a pastel mural of clouds, teddy bears, and hot air balloons on the nursery wall. She daydreamed about holding her little one in her arms, about the future family outings, about how Mark might become more involved after the baby arrived. Sure, the cracks in their marriage were growing more visible each day, but Lucy clung to hope. One weekend, Lucy received a surprise visit from her college friend, Stephanie Warren, who had some knowledge of Mark's father's social circle. Stephanie worked as a junior PR assistant at a Houston-based firm that occasionally handled events for the Redfields over coffee. Stephanie lowered her voice, glancing around Lucy's cozy kitchen, as if someone might overhear. "I'm not saying Mark is definitely cheating," she began, "but there are rumors swirling around. He's been seen at after-parties with a certain someone." Lucy's heart skipped a beat. A certain someone turned out to be a younger executive working for Richard Redfield. Her name was Colleen Ward. Rumor had it, Colleen was particularly charming, well-connected, and had once boasted of her ability to make men in the real estate world do her bidding. Stephanie saw them together at a company gala, noticing that Mark and Colleen disappeared for an extended period. No one dared ask questions, but tongues were wagging. Even with this information, Lucy told herself she shouldn't jump to conclusions. Mark was often around professional women. Maybe he was merely networking. She appreciated Stephanie's concern, but decided not to confront Mark about it yet. The tension gnawed at Lucy, though especially when Mark introduced last-minute business trips. It didn't help that her pregnancy made her feel more vulnerable. Any confrontation risked pushing him further away. She needed Mark's emotional support now more than ever. The turning point came when Lucy found a receipt for a lavish spa package. It was the kind of gift Mark might lavish on someone he was trying to impress. But it wasn't for Lucy. She recognized the spa's name from the Redfield side of town, miles away from her usual haunts. And the purchase date fell on a weekend. Mark had claimed he'd been meeting a client in Dallas. Lucy confronted him, but Mark merely laughed it off, stating it was a gift for an investor's wife. Lucy found herself in a haze of uncertainty. She began to pay closer attention to Mark's daily habits. He was not only returning home late, he was frequently stepping outside to take phone calls. His once dominant presence at home had faded. Lucy's attempts at connecting through small gestures, cooking his favorite meals, leaving him encouraging notes, often went unnoticed. She was beginning to think she was living with a stranger. Each time she tried to bring up the baby, Mark either changed the subject or mentioned some new business lead. During one chilly evening, Lucy, cradling her growing belly, decided to do something she'd never done before: quietly check Mark's phone. He had left it charging on the kitchen counter. With trembling hands, Lucy woke up the screen only to find it was locked with a new passcode. Her heart sank. He had never locked his phone before. The creeping sense of betrayal nearly overwhelmed her. A few days later, Lucy decided she needed to escape the suffocating atmosphere at home. She drove to her parents' house in Caden and confessed her concerns to her mum. Rosa told her something that would stay with her forever. You can't control Mark's actions, but you can protect yourself. Be wise, honey. Lucy's perspective shifted. She realized she needed a plan, a safety net. She resolved to give Mark one last chance to come clean, but also to prepare for the possibility that her marriage might be built on a fault line. Little did Lucy know that her worst fears were about to materialize far beyond any heartbreak she had imagined. One Friday evening, Mark insisted Lucy come with him to a high-profile fundraiser in Houston, hosted by none other than Richard Redfield. It'll look good for the family, if you're there, Mark said. Lucy, longing to feel included in Mark's professional life, agreed. She slipped into a pearl-colored maternity gown that accentuated her round belly. Nervousness flitted in her stomach. These events were always grand, with well-dressed socialites, clinking champagne flutes, and speaking in hushed, pretentious tones. The fundraiser took place in a sprawling mansion that belonged to one of Richard's oldest business partners, Jonathan Pierce. Lucy trailed Mark through the foyer, introduced to a blur of corporate bigwigs and their spouses. She could sense the stares from women whose eyes lingered on her pregnant form, many with forced smiles on their lips. In the midst of the hustle, Lucy noticed a strikingly beautiful woman with fiery red hair crossing the room. She wore a shimmering black gown that clung to her curves, and she seemed to glide from one conversation to the next, effortlessly commanding attention. When she spotted Mark and Lucy, the woman approached with an air of undisguised confidence. Mark, the woman said, in a silken tone, "I was hoping I'd see you tonight." She glanced at Lucy's baby bump, a flicker of surprise, quickly replaced by a dazzling smile. "This must be your lovely wife," Mark mumbled. "This is Colleen Ward, from the investment division of Redfield Enterprises." His discomfort was palpable. Lucy's heart beat erratically as she forced a polite smile. "Nice to meet you," Lucy managed, extending a hand. Colleen shook it delicately, her eyes betraying a hint of condescension. There was no outright hostility, but Lucy could sense a tension there and an audacity that made her skin prickle. For the rest of the evening, Lucy felt more like an accessory than a partner to Mark. As she tried to mingle with the guests, she caught glimpses of Mark and Colleen engaged in close conversation. At one point, Lucy saw Mark rest a hand lightly on Colleen's arm. As they laughed at some private joke, Lucy felt a sharp stab of pain that radiated from her chest to her pregnant belly. She tried not to panic in front of the other attendees, excusing herself to visit the powder room and calm her nerves. When she returned, Lucy overheard a snippet of conversation between two elegantly dressed women. One said, "He's been spending a lot of time with Colleen, poor wife. She's pregnant too. That's just cruel." They were whispering, but Lucy caught every word as if they'd shouted it. Her eyes stung with tears, yet she refused to break down at a public event. Toward the end of the evening, Mark came over with 2 tall flutes of sparkling cider. "You okay?" he asked, noticing Lucy's pained expression. Lucy swallowed hard and feigned a smile. She nodded, but inside she felt betrayal scratching at her heart. The ride home was tense. Lucy stared out the window, her stomach churning. By the time they arrived at their upscale apartment, she found the courage to confront him. "Mark, is there something going on between you and Colleen?" He froze for a moment, running a hand through his hair. "Don't be ridiculous," he snapped. "You're imagining things. She's just a business contact." "That's it." Lucy, tears in her eyes, placed a protective hand over her belly. "Then why do people keep whispering about you too?" Mark shrugged. "People love gossip. Let them talk." An uneasy silence filled the room. Lucy wanted to push further, but she was exhausted physically and emotionally. She retreated to the bedroom, leaving Mark alone in the living room. That night, Lucy hardly slept, her thoughts tormented by the image of Mark smiling tenderly at Colleen. The next morning, Mark tried to act as though nothing had happened, but Lucy could no longer pretend. She asked him point blank if he loved her. Mark hesitated, his eyes darting away, and Lucy felt a piece of her heart crumble when he finally replied. Of course it sounded hollow. Lucy knew then that her worst fears were not unfounded. Colleen Ward was not just a business colleague, she was the mistress. Yet Lucy had no idea just how deep the betrayal ran, nor the humiliating twist that was about to come her way in the form of a prenuptial agreement, served straight to her face, courtesy of Mark's father's legal team. Lucy's pregnancy entered the late 2nd trimester, a time when she should have been glowing with anticipation. Instead, she found herself more anxious than ever. Mark's behavior grew increasingly distant. He buried himself in new projects, avoiding any meaningful conversation with Lucy. They slept on opposite sides of the bed, backs turned to each other. Tension so thick in the room that Lucy could hardly breathe. One evening, as Lucy was sorting through the mail, an official-looking envelope caught her eye. It was from a prestigious law firm, Anders and Mercer. She opened it cautiously, her pulse quickening. Inside was a formal letter, addressed to her, requesting her presence at a meeting to discuss premarital financial agreements. Confusion rattled her nerves. They were already married. Why now? Lucy confronted Mark. He didn't deny it. Instead, he revealed that his father, Richard Redfield, had advised him to have Lucy sign a revised prenuptial agreement, though now it would be considered a postnup effectively. It's just standard procedure. Mark insisted, refusing to look her in the eye. "My father's restructuring some business assets, and the lawyers want everything clarified." Lucy felt her mouth go dry. "We've been married for over a year." "Mark, we already share finances. Why does your father want me to sign something now?" Mark avoided the question. "Just sign it. It's no big deal." A million thoughts raced through Lucy's mind. Was Mark trying to protect his assets? Was he anticipating a divorce and ensuring Lucy got the bare minimum despite her pregnancy? She remembered her parents' humble home, her father's words of wisdom, and a swirl of anger and fear took hold. She refused to sign anything without understanding the implications. To her surprise, Mark didn't argue or try to coerce her in that moment. Instead, he fell silent. Lucy found his silence more unsettling than anything else. She wondered if his father or Colleen was behind this. Had Mark confided in Colleen about his financial concerns? Days turned into a tense standoff. Lucy spoke to a local attorney, a friend of a friend who advised her to read every line carefully. If the agreement was unfair, Lucy shouldn't sign. That same friend, noticing Lucy's pregnant belly, expressed shock and dismay. You're carrying his child, and he wants a postnup now." It was a rhetorical question, but Lucy had no answer. She felt betrayed, humiliated, and terrified during a brief phone call to her mother. Lucy tried to remain calm, not wanting to burden her aging parents with the full extent of her marital woes. Her mother, however, sensed something was terribly wrong. She made Lucy promise to keep her updated. A week later, Lucy's phone buzzed unexpectedly. The call was from an unfamiliar number. On the other end, a woman introduced herself as Cynthia, an associate at Anders & Mercer. She told Lucy that Mark had scheduled an appointment for them to finalize details. Confusion and dread knotted Lucy's stomach. Finalize? She hadn't even agreed to anything. When Lucy confronted Mark about this phone call, he erupted. "Why do you always fight me on everything? My father's business is on the line. Just do as I say." His voice cracked under pressure, revealing a mixture of frustration and desperation. Lucy stared at him, tears burning at the corners of her eyes. She thought about the baby growing inside her, and the kind of environment she was bringing this child into. "Mark," she said quietly, "I'm scared. Don't you see that?" He didn't respond, only stormed out of the apartment. Lucy realized that Mark was spiraling, controlled by some combination of his father's will and perhaps the manipulations of Colleen. The entire situation was surreal. She never imagined her once loving husband would present her with legal documents to restrict her rights in the event their marriage ended. Yet here she was, pregnant, anxious, and facing the unraveling of everything she thought was solid. She hadn't even touched the papers yet, but in a few days she would be sitting at a conference table, forced to confront the ugly truth about Mark's priorities. She just didn't know how humiliating that confrontation would be, or who else might show up at that table. The morning air was sharp and colorless, like everything in Lucy's life lately. She stood by the window of their apartment, hands resting protectively on her growing belly, watching the gray clouds drift across the Houston skyline. Today was the day she would be asked to surrender what little dignity she had. Left Lucy had spent the entire night awake, tossing and turning in a bed that felt increasingly unfamiliar. Mark hadn't even come home. Not that it mattered. They barely spoke anymore. When they did, it was clipped and tense, void of warmth. Once upon a time, she had loved him so fiercely she could feel it in her bones. Now all she felt was dread. She dressed carefully, not to impress those days were over, but to armor herself. She wore a pale blue maternity dress, with long sleeves and soft fabric that hugged her curves gently. Her face was bare, except for a touch of concealer to hide the sleepless circles under her eyes. No jewelry, no lipstick, just strength. At exactly 1:50 p.m., she stepped into the sleek lobby of Anders & Mercer, the law firm her husband's family used for everything from business acquisitions to estate protection. The air smelled like cold marble and expensive leather. The receptionist, elegant and expressionless, guided her to the 14th floor conference room. "B," she said, not offering a smile. Lucy walked down the corridor, alone every step echoing in the silence. As the door to the conference room opened, she felt her breath catch. Mark was already seated at the far end of a long, dark mahogany table. He wore a charcoal grey suit and a guarded expression, one that didn't shift when he saw her. Beside him sat Richard Redfield, his father, oozing authority in a tailored suit and polished cufflinks. Across from them were two attorneys' folders, open pens poised, and then the door opened again. Lucy turned and froze. Colleen Ward stepped inside like she belonged there. Her glossy red hair was pinned in a chic twist, her black power suit tailored to perfection. She carried no briefcase. No notebook, just confidence. Lucy's heart pounded. "Why is she here?" she demanded, barely able to keep her voice steady. Mark glanced at her briefly, then away Colleen. "She has a stake in some of the shared assets. Dad wanted her involved." The words hit her like a slap. A stake, in the middle of a meeting about her marriage, her fists clenched at her sides. She forced herself not to cry, not to scream, not yet. The lead attorney, an older man with wire-rimmed glasses, cleared his throat. "Mrs. Redfield, thank you for coming. We'd like to go over the revised marital agreement before you sign." She sat down slowly, her back, straight shoulders stiff. The lawyer began. His voice was monotone, clinical. This agreement outlines the conditions of financial separation in the event of divorce. It includes a one-time lump sum payment, a limited spousal support package capped at 12 months, and a waiver of any future claims to Redfield family assets or business holdings. Lucy's eyes scanned the paper in front of her. Lump sum $75,000 spousal support, $2,000 per month for 12 months. No access to investment accounts, retirement funds, or inheritance benefits. No guarantee of child support terms. It wasn't just insulting. It was dehumanizing. "I don't see anything here about the baby," she said softly, trying to keep her voice from shaking. "That's separate," one of the lawyers said, without looking up. "Handled during custody arrangements." Of course it was. Everything about her child. Their child reduced to a transaction. Lucy turned to Mark. "Are you seriously okay with this?" He didn't respond. His eyes flicked to the window. Jaw clenched, she turned to Richard. "This is your idea, isn't it? You're protecting your empire. I'm just the inconvenient pregnant wife." Richard didn't even blink. "This is about protecting what we've built. You wouldn't understand." Lucy's stomach churned. She thought of the baby growing inside her, of the dreams she once had of building a family, all of it crushed under the boot of money and legacy. She reached into her purse, fingers fumbling with her phone. With a subtle movement, she tapped record. "Let them bury themselves." The lawyer continued flipping pages. "Initial here and here, then sign at the bottom." He pushed the papers toward her. Colleen leaned back, crossing her legs, a smug smile playing at her lips. Mark was silent. Richard tapped his watch. Lucy stared at the pen on the table. It felt heavier than anything she'd ever held. "You're really going to make me sign this?" she said, her voice raw, "while I'm carrying your child, with her sitting right there." Mark still wouldn't look at her. "Just sign it. Let's be done." Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them back. She wouldn't let them have that satisfaction. Slowly, painfully, Lucy picked up the pen. Her hand shook. Every stroke of her signature felt like betrayal, not of them, but of herself. She signed. When it was over, she placed the pen down gently and slid the paper back across the table. Colleen smirked. There everyone's protected. Now Lucy stood. Her body trembled, but her spine stayed straight. She looked at them. Each one, Mark, her husband, Richard, the puppet master, and Colleen, the poison in the middle of it all. "You think this is over?" she said, her voice low and steady. "It's not." No one answered. No one moved. Lucy turned and walked to the door, heart pounding. The phone in her purse was still recording. Every word, every silence, every insult, it was all there. She left without another glance, stepping into the elevator, eyes fixed forward. She had signed the paper. But the real war had just begun. Lucy's feet carried her out of Anders and Mercer, almost on autopilot. She cradled her belly in one arm, shielding her unborn child from the emotional turmoil boiling within her. Outside, a sudden gust of wind rustled the leaves along the sidewalk. She paused to catch her breath, reflexively reaching into her purse to check if her phone was still recording. It was. The entire humiliating prenup ordeal had been captured. Back at their apartment, Mark didn't come home that night. Lucy sat in the dimly lit living room. The paperwork splayed across the coffee table. A wave of nausea rippled through her pregnancy part, raw disgust. She felt powerless until she remembered the recording. Could she actually use it? Her friend's attorney contact had once mentioned that in certain states, surreptitious recordings might be inadmissible in court if both parties weren't aware. But Lucy had heard other stories of recordings being used as leverage in spousal negotiations, especially if the content showcased unethical or coercive behavior. She decided to call Stephanie her trusted friend who had first tipped her off about Colleen. Stephanie listened in stunned silence as Lucy recounted the events of the prenup meeting, the presence of Colleen, the cold efficiency of the lawyers, and the fact that Mark had forced Lucy to sign under such appalling conditions. Finally, Lucy told Stephanie about the secret recording. "Good for you," Stephanie said. "You need evidence." "Lucy, Mark and his father are obviously out to protect themselves. You have to do the same. Keep that recording safe." Lucy felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps she wasn't entirely defenseless. The more she thought about it, the more she realized she had to let Mark know she wasn't just some doormat. If he wanted to treat her like a business liability, she'd show him she wouldn't be taken advantage of without a fight. The following day, Lucy mustered the strength to confront Mark. He arrived home after lunch looking disheveled and stressed. She suspected he'd been with Colleen, but didn't ask her eyes zeroed in on him the moment he stepped inside. "I can't believe you did that to me," Lucy said, voice trembling with anger. "Making me sign that prenup with your mistress looking on." She spat out the word mistress with all the contempt. She felt Mark avoided her gaze. "This is business? You wouldn't understand." Lucy nearly laughed at the absurdity. "You keep saying that," she said, arms crossed over her stomach. "But your business just tore our marriage apart." I recorded the entire meeting, by the way. The shock on Mark's face was unmistakable. "What did you say?" Lucy held her ground. "I recorded it. I have proof. Proof of your father's intimidation, and of the fact that your mistress was present. If you push me, or if you ever try to use that prenup against me, trust me, you'll regret it." For a moment, Mark looked like he might explode with rage, but he contained it, running a shaky hand through his hair. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me," Lucy said. She didn't flinch. A tense silence followed. Broken by the ringing of Mark's phone, Lucy saw Dad flash on the screen. Mark grimaced, picking up the call. He mumbled quick replies, then hung up. "I have to go," he muttered, grabbing his coat. "Don't do anything stupid." After he left, Lucy's adrenaline crashed. She sank onto the couch, tears sliding down her cheeks. For all her bravado, she was terrified Mark's family had deep pockets and influence. But Lucy knew she couldn't back down. Not for her sake, not for her babies. A few hours later, she received a text from Stephanie. "Check your email. I sent you something interesting." Lucy opened her laptop to find a series of screenshots that Stephanie claimed were taken from a private social media group for employees in Richard Redfield's network. The screenshots showed Mark and Colleen at a romantic dinner in an exclusive restaurant, apparently taken by a co-worker who spotted them. Another set of photos captured them, dancing intimately at a party. Lucy's stomach churned, but she saved everything into a secure folder. More evidence, she thought grimly. Her phone buzzed again, this time from a blocked number. She hesitated, then answered. A woman's voice spoke tense and hurried. "Lucy, you don't know me, but I work at Redfield Enterprises. I overheard Mr. Redfield talking about paying off a tabloid to keep Mark's affair quiet. You should be careful." Before Lucy could respond, the line went dead. Lucy stared at her phone in disbelief. Now Richard Redfield was getting tabloids involved. Lucy realized she had stumbled into a nest of vipers. She might be outmatched, but she was no longer alone. People on the inside felt sympathy for her, sympathy for a pregnant wife, betrayed so cruelly, that gave Lucy a thread of optimism. Clutching her belly, Lucy made a vow to protect her unborn child at all costs. The recording was her safeguard, her trump card. She didn't know exactly how she'd use it. Maybe she'd only threaten its release. Maybe she'd share it with the press if push came to shove. But she had a weapon. Now a path to justice. The question was whether that would be enough to withstand the storm that was coming. Tensions escalated quickly in the weeks that followed. Mark and Lucy's home life became a battle zone of silent dinners and frosty glares. Meanwhile, Lucy discovered that Richard Redfield was making calls behind the scenes, pressuring Lucy to keep certain details confidential. Through cryptic text messages and phone calls, Richard's legal associates reminded her that the Redfield family had far-reaching connections. Lucy felt the noose tightening around her. Unbeknownst to Lucy, karma was already in motion, weaving a twist that would turn the Redfields' power against themselves. Word of Mark's affair with Colleen was spreading quietly through insider circles. Despite Richard's attempts to bribe or muzzle potential whistleblowers, the rumor mill churned. People whispered that Mark had forced his pregnant wife to sign a postnup while his mistress looked on. It was the kind of salacious gossip that tabloids devoured. One afternoon, Lucy's attorney friend reached out. "I heard from a reliable source that a sensational story about the Redfields is about to break," she said, "but the publication has been offered a hefty sum to bury it. They might still run it if they can get a direct source or explosive evidence." Lucy instantly thought of her secret recording. She wrestled with the moral implications. Did she really want to air her marital grievances in a tabloid for the world to see? But then she pictured Mark and Colleen smirking across from her at that conference table, Richard's lawyers demanding she sign away her rights, her unborn child's future treated like a footnote. She found herself leaning toward the idea that going public might be the only way to secure her and her baby's future. Meanwhile, Mark was increasingly absent. Lucy heard from acquaintances that Mark was seen at corporate gatherings, arm in arm with Colleen. He had essentially stopped trying to hide their relationship. It tore Lucy apart, but also fueled her resolve. She deserved better. The collision between Mark's personal life and the Redfield empire finally exploded during a grand gala, celebrating Richard Redfield's latest real estate acquisition. The event was meant to be a triumphant high society affair, held at a luxurious hotel in downtown Houston. Lucy decided not to attend. She refused to subject herself to more public humiliation. She stayed home, feeling her baby kick softly, both comforted and pained by the rhythmic reminder of new life amidst her turmoil. Around midnight, Lucy's phone rang. It was Stephanie, voice laced with excitement. "Lucy, you won't believe what just happened at the gala," she said, breathlessly. An anonymous tipster sent an audio file to a local gossip reporter. "It's apparently a recording of Mark, Richard, and Colleen pushing you to sign some kind of agreement while you were pregnant. People are freaking out." Lucy's pulse jumped. Wait, what? My recording? She'd never shared the file with anyone except Stephanie, but she'd only told her about it. She hadn't actually sent it. Could the tip have come from Stephanie inadvertently, or had Lucy's phone been hacked? Confused but intrigued, Lucy listened as Stephanie recounted how a local gossip columnist, Pamela James, had publicly hinted that a major scandal would drop the next day. The columnist had teased an insider audio bombshell involving one of Houston's wealthiest families. Lucy's mind spun. Someone was using her story, her pain, for sensational headlines. But maybe this was precisely the kind of exposure that would hold Mark and Richard accountable. Sure enough, the very next morning, social media exploded. Pamela James posted a tweet. "Exclusive tomorrow. High-profile family scandal. Audio clip reveals shocking betrayal of a pregnant wife." Stay tuned, Richard Redfield's PR team scrambled to control the narrative. Mark's phone buzzed incessantly as Lucy discovered from a flurry of texts he sent her, demanding to know if she'd leaked the recording. Lucy didn't respond. In a matter of hours, the entire dynamic shifted. Mark showed up at their apartment, unannounced, looking visibly shaken. "Lucy, we need to talk," he said, voice trembling. "Did you send that recording to the press?" Lucy folded her arms. "No, I didn't. But I don't feel sorry if it gets out." Mark's eyes searched hers, perhaps looking for a glimmer of the old Lucy who would cave to his demands. But Lucy remained steadfast. He swallowed hard and said, "You have to deny it, make a statement that it's all a misunderstanding." Rage flared in Lucy's eyes. "You want me to lie to protect your father's reputation? After you humiliated me, after you paraded your mistress around?" She nearly shouted, tears brimming in her eyes. Mark looked like he wanted to protest, but words failed him. He stormed out, leaving Lucy in a swirl of adrenaline and confusion. Everything seemed to be happening at once. The recording was out there, the press was about to pounce, and Lucy's marriage was as good as dead. But maybe this was the chance for Lucy to finally reclaim her dignity. True to Pamela James's promise, the scandal erupted the following day. The front page of a local gossip site featured the headline, "Betrayal in the Redfield Empire exclusive audio of forced prenuptial agreement." Beneath the headline was a brief audio excerpt, just enough to confirm that Mark's pregnant wife was being coerced into signing with a woman identified as Colleen Ward present, and references to Mr. Redfield's explicit instructions. The reaction was immediate and volcanic. Social media platforms were flooded with outrage, condemnation, and speculation. How could anyone do this to a pregnant woman? Is this the type of family that rules our city? Comments poured in, hashtags trended, and the Redfields' once sterling reputation plummeted overnight. Lucy watched it all unfold with a mixture of trepidation and grim satisfaction. She hadn't chosen to leak the recording, but she couldn't deny that she felt vindicated as public sympathy rallied around her. Within hours, she received dozens of supportive messages from acquaintances, some of whom she barely knew. Even her small hometown paper in Caden picked up the story, though, with a more sympathetic headline focusing on Lucy's plight. Meanwhile, Mark was in full damage control mode. He blew up Lucy's phone with calls and texts, each more frantic than the last. "Please, Lucy." He begged on one voicemail. "Tell them it was all a misunderstanding. We can fix this." Lucy found the irony staggering. He was suddenly concerned about the truth after months of deceit. An unexpected ally emerged in the chaos, Jonathan Pierce, the man whose mansion had hosted the first fundraiser Lucy attended. A well-respected figure in the real estate world, Jonathan felt disgusted by how Richard and Mark treated Lucy. He reached out to Lucy privately, expressing his support and offering legal assistance if she needed it. He also hinted that Richard's empire was not as stable as it seemed. Major investors were threatening to pull out, spooked by the scandal and the moral implications. In another twist, Lucy received a phone call from one of Richard Redfield's lawyers, who proposed a hefty settlement if Lucy would publicly retract her allegations. He suggested Lucy claim she had been emotional and misinterpreted the situation. The offer was surprisingly large enough money to support Lucy and her child for years. All she had to do was sign a confidentiality clause. Lucy's heart pounded as she considered the offer. Wasn't this exactly what she wanted? Security for her baby's future? But she remembered that humiliating conference room, the cold stares, the mistress's mocking smile. She recalled the nights she wept into her pillow, feeling worthless. Taking their hush money now would mean letting them walk away without consequences, possibly continuing their pattern of abuse with others. That night, Lucy tossed and turned, unable to sleep. She finally resolved that no amount of money could buy her silence. She was done playing by the Redfield's rules. The next morning, she instructed her attorney friend to reject the settlement offer. Lucy's decision triggered immediate backlash. A vitriolic statement from Richard Redfield hit the press accusing Lucy of trying to extort the family. He painted her as a gold digger who married Mark only for his money and was now trying to ruin them out of spite. It was classic victim blaming, but Lucy refused to be cowed. Pamela James, the gossip columnist, even reached out directly to Lucy, asking for an on-the-record interview. Initially, Lucy hesitated, fearful of more negative publicity, but after seeing Richard's statement, she agreed. Over tea at a discreet cafe, Lucy poured her heart out to Pamela. The affair, the forced signing her pregnancy. She clarified that she had never asked for money, only respect and protection for her unborn child. Pamela took detailed notes, her eyes brimming with empathy. A week later, the interview hit the headlines, "Lucy Martinez speaks out." The real story behind the Redfield prenup. The article painted a vivid picture of a pregnant woman betrayed by the man she loved and humiliated in front of his mistress, only to be intimidated into signing an unfair legal document. The piece humanized Lucy in a way that resonated with readers far beyond the city. And with that, Lucy's side of the story dominated the airwaves. As the scandal gained momentum, Lucy felt the tides of karma swirling around Mark and Richard. The deals they had lined up began to crumble. Investors distanced themselves from Redfield Enterprises, citing moral grounds. Corporate partners paused or cancelled projects afraid of backlash in the court of public opinion. Colleen Ward, once so smug, found her own reputation. In tatters, her colleagues treated her like a pariah. Mark called Lucy, in tears begging her to meet and talk. But Lucy was no longer the naive woman who could be placated with excuses or empty apologies. She agreed to meet only on the condition that her lawyer be present. It was time to set the record straight and let Mark finally face the consequences of his actions. The meeting took place in a neutral law office, away from the city's prying eyes. Lucy arrived with her attorney friend, who had stepped up to represent her more formally. Now that the stakes were so high, Mark sat in the conference room, eyes hollow, his hair disheveled. Lucy barely recognized the confident, self-assured man she had married Lucy. He began, voice shaky. "I'm sorry I was under so much pressure from my father. I felt trapped, Colleen." He paused, wincing. "It was a mistake. I let it go too far." Lucy held up a hand. "Don't, whatever we were, is gone. This is about our child." Now Mark's lawyer spoke next, proposing a revised financial agreement and an immediate divorce. If Lucy wanted one, he promised to scrap the old prenup. Lucy's attorney demanded full custody arrangements that ensured Lucy's baby would be cared for. Mark nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. He realized he was losing everything: his marriage, his reputation, and possibly his child's respect, long before the child could even speak. Meanwhile, Richard Redfield was conspicuously absent. Rumor had it that he was frantically trying to salvage what remained of his empire. Investors were bailing, and multiple legal investigations were cropping up, some apparently linked to shady business deals that had come to light following the public scandal. Lucy felt no sympathy for him. He had orchestrated her humiliation. Now he was reaping the consequences. As for Colleen, Lucy had heard that she'd been placed on unpaid leave pending a moral conduct review at Redfield Enterprises. Word spread that she was frantically applying to rival firms, but found herself blacklisted. The real estate world was smaller than one might think. Her misdeeds, once flaunted in exclusive circles, now barred her from those very same circles. Lucy saw the final draft of the settlement and custody agreement. It was far more generous than the prenup Mark had forced upon her, providing adequate financial support for her child. She thought of turning it down to twist the knife further, but then remembered she had someone else to consider. Her baby, accepting the settlement and finalizing the divorce, gave her the stability she needed. And after all, no amount of money would truly heal the betrayal. Peace of mind was more precious. The day the divorce became official, Lucy felt an odd mixture of relief and sorrow. She had once loved Mark, deeply believed he was her forever. But the Mark sitting across from her in that final hearing was a stranger. He mumbled an apology again, tears silently streaming down his cheeks. Lucy listened without emotion, then picked up her purse, resting a protective hand on her round belly. For Lucy Karma had delivered its justice in a tangible way. The Redfields, once seemingly untouchable, had been publicly disgraced. Mark, in his arrogance, had lost his marriage, his social standing, and his father's unqualified support. He was left to pick up the shards of a life he had shattered with his own hands. And Lucy. She had emerged stronger, more resilient, and with the means to ensure her child's well-being. A month later, Lucy returned to her childhood home in Caden. Seeking solace among the sunflower fields, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy, whom she named Noah David Martinez. The Redfields tried to send flowers and gifts. Lucy politely declined them. She preferred to share her joy with her parents, who cried tears of happiness as they held their tiny grandson. In time, Lucy healed. She found a quiet resolve in the lessons learned, forging a new path as a single mother. Every so often she glanced at the old recording stored securely on a cloud drive, a testament to what she had endured and conquered. She no longer needed to replay it. The memory of that humiliating moment had lost its power. She was free. Lucy's harrowing journey from naive newlywed to empowered single mother is a stark reminder that resilience rises from heartbreak, and truth can topple even the mightiest empires. Betrayed by the man she once adored, forced into a humiliating prenup in front of his mistress, Lucy refused to be silenced. Her secret recording shattered the Redfields' carefully manicured reputation, proving that no amount of wealth can bury justice forever. As she walks through the sunflower fields of her hometown, with baby Noah in her arms, Lucy carries not only her scars, but also her newfound strength. She stands as living proof that we can reclaim our power, no matter how dark our circumstances. If Lucy's powerful story moved you, please hit the like button, share it with friends who need some inspiration, and subscribe to our channel for more true-to-life dramas. Your support helps us bring stories of hope and courage to light.